What's up, guys? Doug and Nick back at you with another episode of the Rad podcast. So today we decided we're going to talk about age and real life and riding bikes and kind of how it all ties together. Do younger riders have a certain advantage because they started younger, because they don't have responsibilities? Is it still possible to ride at a high level once you get older? How do you balance all the things that life throws at you? We want to get into some of that today. And so I guess we're going to start off by talking about the young whippersnappers you see on the internet doing crazy tricks. Are they doing these crazy tricks because they're young and invincible, or is there more to it? Like, what do you think? So you've ridden with Caden Stone, and he's 20 now. We figured out he's 20 now, but he's been around for quite a while, doing crazy tricks and just making moves. And so if we figure he's been riding for say 10 years, if he started at 20 and now he's 30, would he be riding at the same level he is now? What do you think?
Ooh, so that was a
That's a
good
tough
intro.
one.
That was a good intro,
Yeah.
Doug. That was like the
We-
back of a book. Is there more to it, or is there more to it? That was like
we
a
were able
synopsis.
to polish it up because this is the second one, so we
Yeah.
got some practice.
That's funny because I mean, by 10, Caden was already doing like recon tour contests.
Yeah.
Like he was doing like the junior series, and I think Caden was already doing like whip airs and double trucks and stuff at like 10, 12 years old.
When we were in
And
Recon Tour and he was in Recon Tour, he was absolutely better than me, and I think I was riding in like the open, and he's in the junior. So
yeah, I was like
So there's
18. So he's like 8 years behind me. But it's funny because, at that time when I was doing recon tours, I'd probably been taking riding pretty seriously for, 2-3 years. And thinking of his age, he had probably been taking riding pretty seriously for, 2-3 years. And it's like, if you look at those 2 or 3 years, I feel like my physical stature allowed me to progress in a different way. Like Caden Stone at 10 years old wasn't doing flip whips and double flips and stuff like that, whereas me 2.5-3 years into really taking it seriously, I was doing flip whips and double flips and stuff. But I went straight to those tricks, so I kind of skipped the other stuff.
right,
But
right.
but then if you look at like what comes after that, I think you can really see like the difference in like what an age gap does.
Wait. I just want to make sure. So what you're saying is like when Recon Tour, when Caden was young, you got the same out of those 2-3 years that you were riding, right? Like it was the same for you as it was for him. But now if we look at you and him now, all this time in the future, it's different. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, so basically what
Okay,
I'm getting
okay.
at is so like when I first saw Caden Stone ride, it was like a 2013 recon tour. I was only 1 year out of high school at that time, and Caden
Okay.
was what, 5th grade probably.
Yeah.
And so both of our first, even though he's 8 years behind me, we both probably started riding about the same time, like seriously, except he was 7 and
Yeah,
I
he was
was,
a lot younger.
15. And because I did my first flip at 16. And so that's kind of that's like my markers. I did my first 360, my first flip when I was like 16. Those like 2.5 years, 3 years were pretty no responsibility. And then
Yeah.
I continued to have kind of no real responsibility until about probably 20. And 20 is when I started competing. And, when I say no responsibility, like I still had stuff to pay for. I still worked a job. I went to school full time. And so, I mean, even that already, it's like, Caden probably went to elementary school and had homework and stuff. And, I went to college. I only went 3 days a week, but then I worked like the other 2 days a week. So I was riding after work in between college classes. And you can see
Whenever you
how
could.
already my schedule probably was a lot tighter. And then I think as a kid, you have more time to just focus on riding, probably because that's what's just really fun for you. and you just want to be doing it every chance you get. And that's how I was until a point. And then you start to almost have to, I think, force yourself to do it because you've got so much other stuff going on. You've got, the schooling, you've got work, you've got things to pay for. And so riding, it's not that it's not fun. It's that carving out the time for it starts to be more difficult, and you've got to really make more effective use of that time.
And especially if you're not getting anything out of it. Like, you go to work, you get money, and you use your money to pay for things. You go to school, you're working towards that degree. And so those are higher priority things. Whereas riding your bike, if you're not doing it as a career, then it's just like, oh man, like I can't justify this time commitment to go out and do this, or to make myself sore or something like that. And so if you're, in that point in your life when you're older, and it's a lot harder to commit to it because it's not something that you have to do. It's something you want to do, right?
Yeah. And, let me just kind of clarify, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with riding as a hobby. If you can only carve out one day a week, one day every couple of weeks, but it's like, if it makes you feel good and you're doing it, like, that's awesome. The basis of this conversation is like, if you want to take it to a professional level, is it possible to start later? Because that's what I wanted. I had no doubt in my mind that I could ride at a pro level. And so, I think one benefit to starting older for me was that I had like a big picture in my mind. Like, I kind of had like, okay, like I had like these benchmarks. I had like, okay, we need to be doing this and this and this, and we need to balance it this way, this way, this way. Whereas when you're younger, you're kind of just getting better just because that's like just the natural progression of it. Maybe when you're 10 years old, you're not really thinking about being professional. So you have like this different mindset. But, to go back to that, it's like, he's 10, I'm 18, and then we go to like me being 20, and now I'm competing professionally. So, I made really good use of that, those like 5 years. Progressed really, really fast because there was no other option, because the clock is ticking. How long can you really, put off making any kind of money for yourself or doing anything? And, I think I played it pretty smart. I did a lot of shows. I did circus shows. And so I was able to pretty much every year, and I networked a lot. So for those years, I was able to compete, do shows, do my Europe trips, go to European contests, all that stuff, with a little bit of sponsor support, but mostly just, trying to play it smart. And I was always like, hey, if I can break even at the end of the year, like live the dream, that's fine. But then, then I moved out, and my girlfriend moved across the country with me. And then it was like, okay, so now we're, in 2019, and I know COVID hit in 2020, so that definitely played a part. But once I then had rent, you can see how like all of a sudden everything slowed down.
Yeah.
My riding didn't necessarily, but my ability to push for contests did, and it slowed down pretty abruptly. And let's say that time Caden's still 15, 15, 16, so still like school age. No job. And I don't know Caden personally, and he's a shredder, like, and I actually thought he was kind of like dwindling down, because one thing that happens when people are so young, they've got to jump up bike sizes.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I've seen plenty of people who are really good at 13 that never really adapt well to the bigger bike.
Yeah.
Or
they have to get a 20-inch.
Yeah. Or they have that phenom age where they're like considered like a phenom. But then once you're 16, 17 years old, you either compete with the big boys or you don't. You know what do you know that? I think that's something that people don't think about, is that you could be like this prodigy 12 to 14-year-old, but there's an age that you hit, and I think it's around 16 to 18, because, this isn't golf. You don't get you're not forced to go through some amateur ranks, and you don't have to win amateur championships and then go to
Yeah.
pro school to like be a PGA golfer. For BMX, it's like there's this unwritten age where all of a sudden you are kind of in the middle of being able to do like open class,
Yeah.
and you got to jump up with the big boys. And Caden made that leap very well. So did Bryce Tryon. Bryce was like a young phenom kid, made that jump really well. But it's like you kind of, with all these kids, once they get about 15, 16, you go, okay, but now what? Because we saw people like Daniel Sandoval at 18 and Pat Casey at 18 and Brett Banasewicz at 16, 17 winning dew tours. And so it's like there's an age right there where all of a sudden your phenomness doesn't matter, and you either got to step up and play or sit down.
Figure something else out. Yeah. Well, like Caden BMX, the real young one, right? His riding is incredible to watch. Dude is super talented. But I see what you're saying. Like if you threw him in the mix with somebody at Feast, it would just be a whole different thing. Like the standards are kind of jumped up. And so you have a lot of time while you're younger to figure that out and to stand out and learn more about your progression and everything. But yeah, once you get to that point, you've got to be real serious and figure it out. And I guess the idea is that hopefully for them, they kind of hit that point before they have to either lose their parents' support, before they have to quote unquote grow up and start to get a job and start to work and get distracted by those responsibilities. Because like honestly, riding at a high level, it's a full-time job. Like you look at these pros, man, they're spending time in the gym, they're spending time riding, they're spending time with every part of it, promoting. Like there's so much that goes into it. And if you had to work to go to your contests or to buy your health insurance and stuff like that, man, that you just don't have any time to actually become top level. Like you could still progress, you could still have fun, you could still ride, but training, I guess that's kind of the good way to put it. Like these contest people are training for it versus just riding. Like it's a whole different outlook, and the responsibilities make it hard to train.
Yeah, and a lot of time, necessarily, maybe it's not even like the time commitment of those responsibilities. Sometimes it's like the mental side of it. You know, like if you're a top athlete with big sponsors, you get hurt, your paychecks still come in.
Yeah.
While you recover. But if you get hurt and you maybe, it would influence your ability to, pay your bills or pay for your health insurance, or then you've got a big medical bill. So like if you were, making ends meet, like me, I was breaking even all year. You have an injury, well, you didn't really budget for that, That's a setback, and that being in your mind alone is enough to really throw you off the tracks. Whereas like, even younger kids, they don't want to get hurt, but they don't really have to, besides not being able to ride their bike, they don't really have to personally deal with those consequences. And, when we talk about like the phenom age, the real advantage you have when you're a phenom is, one, obviously you got a head start, but two, you've got a following, and you've got like company support, and you've got eyes on you. Mm-hmm. And, so like Caden Stone and BMX Caden, like they've had support from sponsors. I don't know what kind of support, I don't know how much, but you've got these opportunities and this support. And so, but like I said, there is that age where everyone's wondering, are they going to make the leap, or are they going to fall off? Because, how long could your phenomness keep you going? Like, do you know who Jackson Goldstone is?
Mm-hmm. The mountain bike kid. Yeah.
Okay, so Jackson is an absolute animal on a bike. Like really, really good all around bike rider. And I spent a lot of time riding with that kid. Like he was kind of Jake
still
Kinney's.
On a little bike?
No. So he was kind of like Jake Kinney's prodigy kid. And I feel like Jackson, I jumped the mega ramp. When I was filming my mega ramp video, Jackson jumped it for the first time ever, and he was 10. and it was on like this mini downhill bike. And that was really cool to be there with him for that. But what was crazy is, to me, Jackson was always 10, 12 years old, and now he's like 18 or 19. And what happened with Jackson is he kind of got a lot of like he got a lot of big support. He had a big following. You know, he was a phenom, and he got invites to things like 9 nights and stuff, which are all trick based. You know, and he was doing some tricks, but then at the time, he was almost the same age as Emil. And Emil, you know, at 16, 17, was winning events, and you knew he was the next big thing. You know, this kid, Caden, that lives in Maine, dude, what's with Cadens? The name Caden is clearly... Yeah.
I'm gonna name my kid Caden and see what happens. We'll test it out.
He's 17, and what's funny is all 3 of these Cadens, all their names are spelled different.
Yeah.
But Caden Ingersoll, coolest freaking kid ever, comes from gymnastics, and he's like 17. He is the next thing. I can tell you right now, he is the next thing. And but you know, compare the tricks.
How did Jackson transition? Like, you
so
know,
that's what I'm gonna get at right now.
Okay.
So, you know, Caden is 17, doing flip double whips, 3 double down whips, like all the tricks, you know. And Emil was doing all the tricks, and Jackson was still getting so much of the hype and support, but wasn't doing any of these things. And I knew he was at that age where, like, is who Jackson is going to keep carrying him, or is he going to have to make a switch? And he made a switch. He started racing downhill. And
he was sponsored by Fox and like doing, you know, he was more on the with influencer side of it too, right?
Yeah.
More than just like more people have probably heard of him than Emil. And
exactly.
So he made the switch to downhill racing because he wasn't doing the tricks.
Yes, because he was on this path to like being free ride slope style guy, and so he went and switched to downhill racing, and he won the Junior Worlds first year, like insane downhill rider. And I think next year he'll start racing pro, which is the smartest decision he could have done because he took all of his bike skills and used it. So he bridged that gap in a different way, you know.
And so that was a smart switch.
Yeah. And like Caden Stone, you know, up until like last year, he was still competing in like the open, like amateur events, like with Sean Curlis and stuff. And then now all of a sudden, I think Caden is at a feast level. There's still like a slight gap there.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's doing like the UCI stuff, but it's just it's a trip seeing like, you know, these younger people try to bridge that gap. But I think they need to bridge that gap of going from like amateur level to the top before responsibility kicks in.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking while you're talking about that, there's almost 2 different ways, I guess, to go about it. It seems like with Jackson, but so Caden Stone, very, very, very good rider, right? And he can hang with most of the big dogs. He's kind of got that young, like Brett Benasewicz thing going on, where Brett had a lot of good tricks, but linking them together and finding the flow was what he needed to work on. And it's something I think that just comes with time. Like, you know, Dares can put something together very well with what he has, and it's something you learn to do. But BMX Caden, being so young where he's at, he's super talented, but I don't think he'd have to worry about competing pro. And I say that because he's got that celebrity around him already at that age. Like, you can pivot with that. Where Caden, I don't know, man. I feel like Caden kind of dropped the ball on that. Like recently or last year, he started pushing YouTube videos and growing. Like, he's growing his YouTube super fast. It's like, I don't know, 20K or something. Just so fast because he has that Instagram following. But if he would have pushed that route when he was a lot younger, like Caden, he probably wouldn't have to really pursue any kind of pro riding in a sense to keep up with the sport and keep into it. Now he can still go that route, and his videos are good. Like I watched one of them. It's like I'm gonna stay on my bike for 24 hours, and so like he's standing there, he's eating on his bike, he's like sleeping, and then I was like, this is really cool. Like that kind of stuff's cool, and he's charismatic, and he does seem pretty humble. So anyway, there's potential there, but where what it comes down to, like Emil focused the riding side of it and the progression side and the pro riding, where Jackson could probably just not even go pro with downhill and just be known as like that rider and go that route. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, totally. Like I think, the influencer status is definitely like a new route to go. I think Caden, I think, got good at a time, kind of like Bryce. Like they got good at a time where it was like that wasn't really an option. Like that wasn't really
The
in your
YouTube
head.
stuff.
Yeah, in 2013,
Yeah.
that wasn't really in your head.
Yeah, true.
And then I think when the YouTube boom, we'll call it, happened, 15, 16, 17, I think that's like kind of when Caden Stone, I think, took like a dip. Maybe wasn't sure, like I don't know personally, but maybe wasn't sure if he wanted to keep riding. Maybe wasn't sure if he wanted to actually push for that top level. Whereas like, BMX Caden, he's got the house set up, he's got the yard, he does nitro stuff. And, I can't say that BMX Caden at 10 years old decided, oh, I want to be an influencer and make big YouTube videos. I think that was the parents. I think his parents set that up for him 100%. And they did well. And he's also, he performs with Nitro Circus, so he's got that going for him. So for him, it doesn't really matter, bridging that gap to professional, but it's like, it's a trippy thing. Like,
yeah, I mean, you're right about the timing.
Yeah.
The timing for sure with Caden Stone, and YouTube wasn't like a prominent thing. Influencer wasn't really a prominent thing, and the way you went about it was so different. So that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, when I was like really progressing, 2011, 12, 13, Instagram didn't even allow you to post videos yet.
Yeah, it's like the square pictures.
Yeah, so you can just see like, the difference in, like that was back when you actually thought that someone giving you a shout out was the difference, Whereas now you can post a slow motion hot bar and potentially get 3 million views.
Yeah.
And so the influencer status is weird. It's such a trip.
It's changed a lot.
Yeah. But really, like I said, where it starts to get interesting, because, Caden Stone still really isn't, I don't think, old enough to see where it's going to go. If he stays on the path that he's on right now, he'll be a top contender. Like when I hadn't seen him ride in person in years, and at the triples event in Anaheim, all of a sudden he's doing quad whip on the first set to cash roll double bar. And it was mind-blowingly impressive how much control that kid has.
Yeah, those are big boy tricks.
How actually good he is. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's just so weird because, like I said, I still think of him as being so young and doing these amateur contests. And then all of a sudden when you realize, like, this kid does have everything that he needs. And so it'll be interesting, like, does he start to make the money to keep that going? Mm-hmm. Does he keep, parent support? Or does he, start making a little bit of money to get by and keep pushing it? Like, you kind of don't know at that age, because I did it as long as I could with parent support and just balancing little things. But, I got the quickest degree I could get so that I could just focus on riding. And then I ended up getting into wedding photography so I could do something where I worked the least amount possible to pay for what it was. And then now, I think in the last year is when I've seen the biggest switch in myself, which, 27, 28, just turned 28 years old. And now it's like, okay, I need more money than this to do things, because I have other ambitions and stuff than just riding bikes now. And so even though I still would love to like get back to the level I was at, it's not my main priority anymore. And so it's like I feel like the second it becomes not your main priority, you start to question, why is this a priority at all?
Yeah, I definitely see that. I feel like, you've got a limited lifespan with it to as a serious thing. Like maybe by 30, that's been my goal. So I've always had this plan. It's like I'm going to be as broke as I need to be to stay in BMX. Like whatever any decision I make is always going to be towards staying in the sport around it, just because it's something that keeps me grounded and I really enjoy it. And recently I was like, okay, I'm not good enough to ride at a competition level. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it was just a realization I had to like have. Maybe potentially you could get there, but where I'm at in the age, I'm like, all right, what I'd rather do is take a little bit of a turn and try like the influencer side of it and try going that route. And like I'm a decent rider, but I'm not going to try and compete, and I'm content with that. But I've always said, I'm like, look, if I hit 30 and I'm not making a certain amount, like I have a number in my head, a certain amount of money from this brand and everything like that. If I don't do that by 30, that's when I'm gonna not give up. I'll still ride and stuff, but like get serious about financial stuff in life, like I guess I'll get a corporate job. I get all that stuff can wait though. And so it's never been a priority, in my 20s. I'm like, I love riding bikes. I love traveling. That's what I'm going to do. But I'm like, but at some point you got to get serious and make the switch if it doesn't work out. And so that's always been my thing. Like, I feel like if you're progressing, if you're going for a pro career, you've got to be competing very well by, I don't know, early 20s to stay in it and hang with everybody. And then there's a few anomalies that are still competing at 40 plus, 35 plus, but there's not very many. Usually you've got what I'm getting at, I think, is the lifespan of a pro BMX rider is relatively short as a career. And I mean, hell, most of them have to have part-time jobs anyway, just to keep going and riding. And so anyway, it's like when you're starting younger, I think that buys you more time to stretch out that career. So like let's say 30 is the benchmark. Like if you're going to ride pro till early 30s. And if you can get your foot in the door and get started when you're started riding pro when you're 16, 17, like in a lot of these anomalies, that time span that you're in the sport and can get connections, can get sponsors, can get something that actually generates a good amount of revenue for you, you have a lot more time to do so. Whereas if you get into it and you start getting really competitive and riding professionally at 25, that's going to be a lot harder to stretch that out and to make anything out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, when you think of a span of, let's say you go pro at 16 and you've got a 14-year span.
Yeah.
That you can do this at the level before new kids come up. 14 years is a good amount of time.
Bro, that's a long time.
That's a lot of evolving of the sport. That's time. If you've only got a 5-year window, an injury can take a whole year from you.
Yeah, that's a good point. The injury
An
takes
injury
out
can
so
take a
much
whole
of that
year.
time.
A year like COVID can take a whole year. A year where you financially can't go to some contests, that's another year. Like, you don't realize how kind of fast those tick off. And I'm not saying that the number of age makes any difference. It's everything in your life that can and will start to happen with the progression of those age numbers. And if it's going to be different for everyone, I mean, there's plenty of people who are 30 years old who don't have a significant other, have no plans of having kids, and are fine living with 3 roommates and just having dirt jumps in their yard.
Doesn't sound too bad.
It's not me. Like I can't really do that. And I always knew I couldn't do that. Like I didn't want to live in a party house. I didn't want to live in a trap house with 4 people. Like it's not me. I feel like I take everything I do pretty seriously. And so riding for me was always like, I'm going to get really good at it. And yeah, it's fun for me. I like it. But now that I've like switched that competitive mindset, I would rather ride downhill bikes because that's
Was there
fun.
was there
Like
a
I'd
time
rather,
or a point where you like looked at it and you're like, all right, I'm this isn't like, was it having the kid where you decided to put financial stuff more so than the bike riding? Like what was it?
I would say really is the rapid progression of my hip issues, really. Having to battle that every single day, having 2 surgeries in 2017, and then within a year of those surgeries, things being worse than they were ever. Like that's a hard mental game. I mean, the fact that I may ride for 6 weeks at a time and not want to take a foot off with the
Yeah,
idea of
bro,
putting my
that's
foot down.
tough.
So that was really like okay, I'm still managing, but I could never afford a full-time trainer. That's expensive. I couldn't afford that. And it's probably biggest regret I have is, not when I was, 24, like when I had those hip surgeries, was not taking an entire year off. I took, 2 months off, did
And you
physical
got back
therapy, and then
into
went
it real
straight
quick.
back into contests. And I should have taken an entire year off and done nothing except for learn, one, work with a trainer, learn how to incorporate like training, not only get my legs to a physical level, but also to like learn how to really incorporate riding into that as like a training kind of thing, and learn how to balance that because what happened is the skill level could only go up so high as my physical health declined, you know? And
Yeah, yeah.
because you eventually reach this point like I reached where I was afraid to put my foot down. Like there's times where I would rather just do a double flip than go try to do like a long fakie because if I put my foot down it's going to hurt. Like and that's
Yeah.
not a good place to be. Like
Man, what were we were riding and it was the most bizarre thing to me. I think it was when we were filming some of the bike school stuff
it was
in
the fakie video.
was it fakie? And
Yeah, I
you
put my
just
foot
like you're
down and it just
faking and then you just tip over and I'm like, what the hell? And you're like, I can't, my hips don't like move right, you know? And I was
yeah.
like, whoa, that's crazy. Cause and then what I got thinking on that is I was like, you're up in the air doing like 3 down whips and just like huge stuff, and I feel like being able to get out of a crash is a pretty important thing, and for the most part you do okay, but I could see that getting you in pickles when you need to bail or something, and you don't have the agility.
No, and that's like, I took so long off this year because of the 2 injuries, one to my knee and one to my ankle. When I tried to ride again, I just knew the strength wasn't there. So that's why I've been in the gym a lot.
Back in
And
the gym, yeah.
yeah, because I'm just like, dude, right now, like I could go ride downhill bikes and stuff, but I can't ride skate parks and dirt jumps right now. I can't pump, and I would not be able to take a case. And
Yeah.
that being in your head at all won't let it happen. And it's kind of one of those things, like I said, I don't really do anything half-assed. So, once I switched that, like, maybe I'll never get back to that pro level, it literally goes to, okay, but what else could I become really good at?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and that's like wedding photography started as one of these things where, it was just to make money for riding. It was a cash grab. But then I got good at it and I'm like, well, what if I could be like one of the very best at that? And then that started to be like a possibility. I started networking with other really big wedding photographers and, investing in education and really putting a lot of time into that. And for a while, that was a really good balance for riding. But then as I got better at that, the idea of injury before someone's wedding really became
Stress you
prevalent.
out.
And this year I got lucky. I mean, I did one wedding 3 weeks after breaking my ankle, and I managed. And then I went out and hurt my knee a month later, and I was just able to like walk pretty normally, still couldn't crouch or anything. And then I had 8 weddings in a row for in like 9 weeks, and I had a kid at the same time. And so then I was like, I can't be riding right now. Like, and that's a hard decision, but that's like really what I had to do was be like this is my income right now. And it's also something that I'm working hard at. Like I can't be hurting myself right now, which is a really weird thing when your entire life you've been like, oh, if I hurt myself, I'll be fine. Or like you actually, you kind of do feel more invincible when you're a kid. Like I'm like, dude, like I can go do this, flip whip. And if I have to just eject mid thing, I'll just tuck and roll. And I can still do that. I still get out of stuff really well, but it definitely hurts a lot more now.
Yeah. Now that you're older, I get sore and just aches and pains all the time, man. I'm like, when I was 16, 17, I could try double whips all day and go back the next day and do it. Now today, it's like I leave the park with a rolled ankle and like just crying, and just it's not the same once you get older. So yeah, you have to really have gotten yourself in a good spot, I think, in the early years if it's something you're gonna continue to do professionally. Because I mean, I totally get what you're saying, where you've got to look at it and be like, wait, why am I risking my health for this if it's not really, if you're not making money out of it, and you're making money shooting weddings, you're making money at whatever, and you need that money to pay your bills and to support your family, it's like, man, the benefits of going out to ride aren't really that high, especially if it's in a training mindset. Now, for me and for like a lot of other people, it's like, oh, well, riding clears my mind, riding relieves stress, so on and so forth. And you can take it easy. But a lot of my riding, since I started focusing on this, it's always been like more fun, because I'm like, cool, I'm going to go to the park. I'm going to chill. I'm going to do whatever I want. And it was like, I don't know, back to riding when I just started out, and it was like just about riding bikes and hanging out with friends. And then I got that competitive mindset, wanted to compete. And then there's a lot of stress when that's kind of your focus. Like you've got a lot riding on that, and the sessions stress you out. Like there's so much going on. And so anyway, like when I started focusing on this, when I was like, I'm not good enough to compete, then it became more fun because I wasn't always trying to hurt myself and so on and so forth. But had I kept that mindset or gotten it younger, I think that by the time I hit that point where I was like, early 20s, like there might have been a lot more potential for it for me. But it's still just a really fun thing for me to go out and do and ride. But then again, I noticed myself last month not riding as much. It's like the whole reason for starting the brand and everything was so that I could still ride BMX and not have to get a real job. And then I'm like, damn, I'm sitting here editing all day. I don't have any time to ride. Like, what am I even doing? And it's because that side of it is like more valuable in a sense, in terms of like, that's what pays me, and if I sacrifice that to go out and ride, even though like I love riding, it's a silly sacrifice, and it could put me at getting a corporate job at 30 because I didn't focus on what I needed to focus on when I was working on it. It's a big stressful thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when I started YouTube in 2017, right before I had the hip surgeries. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like, okay, this looks like an opportunity to, keep riding. And I got a lot better, and I continued to progress a lot when I was doing YouTube, because when the camera was there, I always wanted the stuff on clips, Mm-hmm. So it forced me to do stuff that I maybe didn't really want to do during the sessions. Like it forced me to do everything because I needed the content. Like it forced me to push the limits and stuff. And then after a few years of just such slow grinding on YouTube and watching people that I knew that were also doing YouTube grow so fast, it was just like, this is dumb. Like, it's kind of like I said, I feel like I need to get really good at things. So when I was making YouTube videos, for me, it started as like, let's just make these videos, this or that. But then it was like, well, I want to make really good quality videos. I want to get good at filmmaking. And then it became more about like, okay, let me make sure the video is really good. And then if you want to film them good, it's not you in the video anymore. You're filming everybody else.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, why? I kind of lost track of like why I was doing it, you know? And so then I kind of just like stopped, because I was like, if I don't see like results, I can't value the work I put into something if I don't see any kind of like results, like any kind of tangible, like, hey, you're getting better at this, you know? And the thing about YouTube and social media and everything is like, you can be good at it. You can make good videos. You can be a good writer. There's some weird thing present that is either missing or just isn't in the cards. It's a weird thing, the internet. But yeah, so then that kind of slowed down on that, and I'm always just looking for the next thing. But when it comes to writing, for me, like whether I have fun or not anymore is really depends on like the environment. Like, what am I out there doing? Like, I love filming clips. Like, that's one of my big goals for this year, is to really put out something. Like, I want to hire a filmer. I want to build some stuff. I want to push myself to another level. And I feel like for me, if I don't have a reason, then I won't. Whereas like me trying to put out an edit, like I've got things that I want to do. And it's funny because I've always said this, and then usually I end up doing them for like an Instagram clip, you know? But there's things like I want to do. I want a good, solid edit, like a real one, you know?
Yeah.
And so that'll help. But also like, I love like riding my bike in Utah, like my downhill bike, building stuff, riding ridges, like hitting big jumps. Like that's fun to me. Like, I don't care if that ever transpires or anything. That's fun to me.
Right.
Like,
okay. Yeah.
riding dirt jumps and, you know, just doing some flips and some spins, like that's fun. And like riding at Woodward is really difficult for me right now, because it's like, if I'm riding that park and I don't feel like doing tricks, within 20 minutes of the session, I'm over it, because I'm like, why am I
There's
here?
nothing else to really do.
Why am I here if I'm not just doing my tricks all day long? And, you know, I think that is a thing too. Like, you know, you get older and you start to realize like, dude, I've been doing the same things for the last 4 years. Every session has been structured the same for 4 or 5 years. And so I have fun going riding different little bike parks, you know, like little dirt jump parks or different skate parks. And if I'm not doing that, then it's just, I don't know, it's a weird spot. It's a weird spot to be in. And it's like one of those things that you never really thought would happen when you were a kid. You know, when you're younger, it's just like, you're just riding, you're doing stuff, and it's weird. Like, shit just changes, and you just get interested in different things. And part of me thinks it's more of that. It's less of losing an interest in riding and or being really good at it. It's more of, the longer time goes, the more you realize like your potential in something else. And
well, you look
just
at all
make
the guys
these
that got into
changes.
car stuff, and that's exactly what it was. It's like, I love being able to do adrenaline rushing things with my bike, and then the car is just like a more expensive, more adrenaline rush version if you get into drifting and stuff like that. And so it's like similar stuff, but a lot of people are like, oh, this is kind of like Eddie and Victor, the Perazzas, like they're both getting into drifting now. Caleb Quanbeck, Adam Elsie, like all these people, it's like a natural move out of it. And so, yeah, it's probably not that they're like, I'm not interested in BMX anymore. It's like, hey, this is really fun. I'm gonna pursue this a little bit. I'm gonna move away. And the cool thing, like I always tell people, it's like, look, BMX is always there for you, and that's the thing of having it as a hobby, or you know, riding your bike is always there. Because if I go right now, if I don't ride for 2 years and I go and become a painter, I'm going to pursue my painting. I suck at painting, but I'm going to pursue my painting passion for a couple of years. the bike's always there for me to come back to and ride and enjoy. Like that's the cool thing about it. It's not like you set it down and then it's impossible to do again, or you lost everything. There's so many people right now that rode in the 80s and the 90s that are getting back into it because they weren't able to keep up with it when they had a family and when real life happened, that the bike's always there no matter what. And so that's like, I think that's the beautiful thing about it, is that it'll always be there whether you're able to actively pursue it or actively ride it or not. And
Yeah,
that's
and
what's
seeing
cool.
that's like one of the things, like for me now, I think I always felt like I've had a very deep understanding of like BMX mountain bikes and like how things work. And for me, one of now my favorite parts of riding is like coaching, is like getting people to that next level. Like, I've always prided myself in being like when I was at contests, I was kind of like the go-to guy. Like other riders be like, hey, what do you think about, this link, like doing this or that? Like, what do you think that's going to score like? Or how do you think this is going to work on this lip? Even though they knew I didn't even do that trick. They knew that my insight on it was something of value. And so like that kid, Caden Ingersoll in Maine, like, him and I talk a lot, and we've done a couple little contests together, and like I've been able to like really kind of in those instances, be like a coach, and he like takes note of what I say, and it's really cool to like actually be able to like influence someone's riding like that in a positive way.
Yeah.
And help things come together. And it's funny because it's like if Caden, he's like, hey, I want to do this trick on this feature, and I know you can do this trick on this feature. He's like, do you want to do it with me? I wouldn't have wanted to do it by myself, but if it's going to help him do it, then I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it together.
Sure.
Or like
hype him up.
Yeah. If I'm like, hey, like, I see you're working on this trick and I haven't done it in a while, but I know how to do it. It's going to like force me to go out and do it, and then like work with somebody on it, or like when I was coaching at Highland, I was still fresh on the knee injury, like couldn't even hardly pedal, but like I did what I had to do to get the kids stoked. So I was like flipping jumps and doing unnecessary risks that I wouldn't have just done by myself. But it's like kind of like coaching for me was the new, like when I was filming YouTube videos a lot, it was like that forced me to do it. But now it's like when I think of like coaching or helping other people get to wherever they want to be with it, like that pushes me a lot more, because now it's not for me. And when riding was for me, it was always to be pro. It was to be really, really good. But now with coaching, I feel like me getting better benefits other people, and like that's now like my reason for wanting to keep doing it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know how many tricks that like we had to film for the bike school course that I hadn't done in years, like, or tricks that I had to go out and learn just so that I could teach them to somebody else.
Well, and to like touch on, like, you're really good at analyzing the stuff and noticing what's different. Like when we did that no footed can video that's on the channel, you're like, okay, well, this is what you're doing, but try this now, And so, and you didn't have to do it. And that's the beautiful thing. Like you could just watch and look at it and be like, oh, that, you need to make these adjustments. And I think that's something that's really important and hard to find, because a lot of people can ride at a high level. Like, I don't know, some how-tos on YouTube. These guys are very talented, right? They're very talented riders, but the way they explain stuff is like, doesn't make any sense. It's like mind numbing. And so being able to do the tricks and being able to relay, notice the issues and guide someone through that process is like two different things. And not very many people are good at the coaching side of it.
Well, and why do you think, I think a lot of people forget that somebody like Shaun White had a coach up until he retired, Who is standing there every time Shaun is learning tricks? The fucking coach. And is that like, you'd have to be dumb to think that the coach is a better snowboarder than Shaun White. He's not.
Yeah.
But you need outside perspective sometimes. Like Supercross guys have coaches literally being like, hey, you in this corner, more of this, more of this. And it's sometimes it's just an experiment, you know, but if you're not consistently moving forward, you're pretty much just going to be moving backwards. And so Jake Leva, way better bike rider than me. Absolutely. But he's always asking me, like, doing things. I'm always giving advice to him, giving advice to Wesley. I'm always giving advice to people who are better than me, because if I feel like it's beneficial, they can take it or they don't need it. Like Jake did like a couple years ago, we were riding the foam pit, and Jake tried to do a 720 windshield wiper. So 360 down whip to 360 whip. And like one attempt, like landed flat on his back or whatever. And he asked me, he's like, you think that's possible? And I'm like, well, not if you do it like that. And I can't do that trick. Like, no chance. But I was able to look at it that first time and be like, yeah, that's possible if you adjust this. We made some adjustments. He went at it again. And I'm like, dude, you're going way too upside down at the start. And by the time you throw that second whip, you're kicking at the ceiling almost like a flip whip. Like you need to push forward more. Like you need to get your chest forward. And, I don't know if these are exactly what was said. This was years ago. But anyways, we got it to kind of work in the foam pit. Like he's the one riding, but he's, taking what I'm saying. And we got it to kind of work. And he's like, it kind of feels right. He's like, but I don't know. I think if I do this, it might work a little better. And so it became like a mix of what he's feeling and what I'm seeing, And then he went out and did it at triples 2 weeks later and won best trick with it. And it's the only time that trick's ever been landed by anybody.
Yeah.
And
that's insane.
And so it's like, it's obviously all him doing it, but the fact that I could have a little bit of input to help make that happen, and the fact that he actually like was going to take what I said, So it's like, I don't know. I think coaching, like I said, is my definitely what I like to do for sure. Like, I mean, I can watch slope style, and when someone crashes on a trick, I know from the second they take off that they're not going to land it. And I'm like, oh, they didn't do this right. They didn't do that right.
And that's a cool way for you to like stay in it without riding at that level, right? Like you didn't have to progress yourself to doing 720 windshield wipers to be able to, like, I don't know, live vicariously through Jake. But this was a good chat. This was a fun topic. But now, where can the people get coaching from you?
At learn.bike. What is it?
Learn.schoolofbikes.com.
Yeah.
Now, there's a link in the description and probably in the comments if you guys want to become a bike school member and get.
It's only $10 a month.
Get the exclusive videos. Get the coaching from Mr. Nick. Now we like to have you guys in there. We like to help you guys progress. It's a lot of fun. So,
I think a big misconception about bike school is, especially when it first came out, people think we're just selling how-to videos. It's really not what it is. Yeah, we have, super like detailed explanations of tricks and high quality like slow-mo footage that you can download so you can like kind of compare what you're doing. But it's like we try to teach you our thought process of going through tricks and learning tricks and convey that to you, because I think without that process and without like a way and a system to really break everything down and learn it for yourself, you could watch 100 how-to videos and it's never going to help you. So, it's that, and then it's also, the ability to post like your footage and ask for like specific help and actually get like personalized feedback. So please don't DM me on Instagram your stuff, because for $10 a month, I will actually help you. But if you DM me a clip on Instagram and ask for help, I'm probably just not going to respond. Sorry, not sorry.
Yo, this guy, homie in the Discord messaged me and said, "Hey, I watched the first bike school video. It's awesome. Have you already made the other one?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And anyway, he saw the bunny hop video, and he's like, "I'm not being a simp by saying this, but the editing, the actual video quality was top notch." So
Yeah.
don't just take our word for it.
Yeah, we filmed like terabytes, multiple
Dude, that was
terabytes of footage.
it was like an
4K.
all week deal. We'd wake up, we'd ride, we'd film, we'd transfer footage. We'd wake up, we'd ride, we'd eat oatmeal, and
Oh
that
yeah,
was
and
it.
then
It's a
we
good time.
edited for 6 months.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
all
was a lot of
there.
work. So we put a lot of work in, and the more people that join, the better it can be because we need your feedback. How can we help you more?
Amen. We just hit you with the bike school pitch at the end, but yeah, no, for real. Thank you guys so much for watching and just being a part of the channel, being a part of this bike riding journey that we all love. Nick, you got anything else to say?
No, nah, keep at it.